Okay, we'll see how that works. This session is now in recording mode. um, so where did I leave off? I think I was talking about just, your general training at this point, trying to do stuff 5 to 6 days a week. And, obviously the age range, if you're not muted, it's probably a good idea. Okay. Yeah, if you're muted, if you could please mute yourself. Thank you. Um, there's probably on this call, there's the full spectrum of athletes. There's young athletes, there's older athletes, there's male, there's female. So there's the full mix, and you kind of have to make adjustments. Like this training plan isn't set in stone. If you might get sick along the way, you might have vacations, you might have work commitments, you might have family commitments. So my suggestion is be as flexible as you can. Try to use it as a guide. Try to get in when you can. There's some bigger days, a month out or so. I think those are probably the key days that you're building up to. And if you can get in those sessions, that'll build a lot of confidence. And obviously, it's, the training for the event too. Um, what else do I talk about? Heart rate monitor versus power. If you have power, that's kind of the gold standard, and that's going to give you the best feedback kind of if you're training with power. It's not required by any means, but you either need power or heart rate, I think, for something like this, to have some kind of metric to gauge your training off of. And in the email Mark sent out, there's a link to like a chart there with a form that you can kind of get your own power zones and levels, and you can even search for it on the internet these days and try to figure that out so you have your own power numbers that you're going off of. And then the workouts have those zones listed that you can target when you're on the trainer or when you're outside. Let's see. Something that you keep in mind how your trainer's set up. If you're on the trainer inside through the winter, or even during the nicer months, if you can't get outside for some reason, I think being in I'll call it non-erg mode is the best. So looking at your power files and seeing that if you're in erg mode, it's very flat and steady, and it's not like outside. So whatever you can do inside to get it to be like outside is very beneficial. I think to your training, and your fitness will apply more if you keep it in non-erg mode. Structured workouts, sometimes they're a little harder to do outside based on roads, terrain, um, you know, wind, all that stuff. So again, another time to be flexible. So if you have something's on the schedule and maybe it's not the best day for 4 by 10 minutes at zone 4, you might have to shift that to another day. But you know, getting it to some degree, is going to be helpful. Uh, what else? That's kind of like the basics of my thoughts on the training plan. I would start now, working through some of that. It's a big day on the bike and figuring out what works good for you and training your gut. I think that's a huge part of the equation too, knowing what you can consume on the bike. I always say it is a bike race, but it's also an eating contest too. You got to be eating a ton to kind of get through the day. Um, if people want to, do I have questions in chats at all? Okay, here's some questions that are coming in. Um, oh, that's a good question. Is there a GPX of the course in Training Peaks Virtual or Rovi? You can turn them into course. Might have to cut down the chunks, but can be done. Um, I don't know of a GPX file that has in Training Peaks Virtual or Rovi, but that might be somebody that's tech savvy that might be able to do that. If you have other questions, you can throw them into the chat and I can kind of answer them. Or, Mark, is there anything specifically? Go over the abbreviations in the training plan. Yes. So you have your different zones. So like, let's see, I'm looking at what week 11 here. Like easy AR, easy aerobic ride. So zone 1, zone 2, if you're looking at the power chart. Um, and then what's another one? So zone one, zone two is just basically going out, getting in some volume, not pushing it by any means. Zone three is when you're getting into more of an effort that you're really having to control stuff, or even upper zone two there. If there's any other abbreviations that sometimes I just caught one right there that didn't get updated. I'll switch between L and Z. So there's level three and zone three. Sometimes people refer to the power zones as levels, but they can also be zones. So if you see an L or a Z in the training plan, it's the same thing. And I thought I had all of them updated. A lot of questions came in. Weight training. I don't get into it specifically because I kind of that's not my specialty, I guess I should say. I just do basic body weight stuff, lunges, push-ups, sit-ups. I'm pretty basic when it comes to that stuff. I always recommend if somebody wants to get into that more that they actually seek out like a personal trainer. But I've always just looked online like good dumbbell exercises for cyclists and kind of just done basic stuff. I think a lot of it is for injury prevention, keeping you healthy, well balanced. As endurance athletes, sometimes we get like too rigid in just running or riding or whatnot. So I think it really helps keep you healthy. Of course. What does MS stand for? Did I miss MS? I don't see MS. If you could tell me what day. There's strength and oh, me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, main set. Thank you. Yep, the main set. So yeah, you'll have your warm up, and then you'll have your main set. That's like the focus quality of the session, and then you have CD, which is cool down. Um, GPX file. Mark put in a GPX file in the chat of coast to coast. I don't know the question about training peaks, and the question is they have a basics training peaks plan. Can it control the trainer, or is that something we need to buy? I don't know that for sure. That'd be something to look up. Personally, I do these same workouts that are listed here, and so as you can see, they're super simple, and you can almost do them from memory, or I have them written down next to my trainer, and I like controlling and not having the trainer do anything for me. And so when I have a zone four interval, it's just me hitting my lap button and me targeting that power for the time. I think that's super important that I think the trainer's not doing the work for you and that you're kind of having to do that. I think that applies really well outside. What is the minimum mileage? So in the training plan, I think there's specifically, I know there's one big ride leading up to the event, and that's I think about 10 hours max. It might be even a little less than that. I think I let some people in. I got to go back to. Um, so yeah, there one or two big training rides and a lot of centuries. 9 hours is kind of the max. So you go more than that, and it's just kind of it's harder to recover from that and bounce back from it. So you got to balance that of obviously pushing yourself, but not overdoing it in training. Yep. No, so that's yeah, intentional and a way to get in the volume without like one if you did like the equivalent of whatever say that takes you're able to get in more volume over 2 days and kind of spread it out a little bit and bounce back. So like that weekend, great example of like don't be planning a huge landscape job in your yard and then trying to fit into big century rides. So that's like get in your ride, get in your fuel afterwards, chill out for the day so that you can bounce back the next day and get in another one. Yeah, great question. Yeah, I'm having a trouble following along with the chat. So if anybody wants to just, I guess, chime in, go for it. Let's do it that way. And then I can let people in too. Any other questions? You always get the question too about what tire to run. That seems to be a big one on, Facebook and, people asking. Um, at this point, I think people say run the biggest you can run. Um, on your bike. I've done the race on 35s all the way up to I think 50s, depending on what my bike could handle. Now, Mark always brings up a good point that I'm typically at a different part of the race, and I'm not like seeing what has happened after the course has been chewed up. So I think that's another huge factor, depending on where you are coming through the sandy sections. It changes throughout the day once a couple hundred riders go through it. So depending on that too. Um, One of the biggest tips for the race that I can give, I think, is use that first 100 as a warm up kind of. You want to get to halfway feeling like you got a lot more to go or a lot in you, because that third section is just it's totally different from the rest, and it's an awesome section, but like it's very misleading when you have that first 100. That's pretty fast and pretty I don't want to say easy, but and then you get into that third section and it gets very hilly with the seasonal roads. So if you can prepare for that, that's super good. And that's a leads like another point. Like if you have the opportunity to train in a little more sandy conditions. It's not crazy sand by any means. They do a great job with the course in terms of like, there's never too much of a long section where it's horrible. There might be some sand or something, but it ends pretty quickly if there is. So you're able to get through it pretty easily. And then once you get through that final checkpoint, heading in, it's perfect because it's primarily downhill. If you look at the file, you might be having to deal with some headwind and stuff at that point in the race. But it's definitely a nice finish. Thoughts on elevate? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Yeah, and so great question. I guess yeah, it depends too on the heat. Let's say it's a hot day. Um, get as much as you can. I typically use a hydration pack plus the bottles on my bike. Um, what are we? Are we seventh year, eighth year? How many years, Mark? No, I can't even keep eighth year. And so it's cool now because the local communities up there have started to catch on. And if you want to call them trail angels or whatever, people are no guarantee, but I've seen it every year grow that there's more and more people out on the course in that second half with water. And so you have opportunities to kind of grab some water and stuff if you're running out during the course. And where's the church, Mark? Is that going into the third, or this is that yeah, is that's after it's in the third. Yeah. So that church now having that in the third section, that's very helpful too. But yeah, I would, depending on your bike setup, hydration pack is good, and then having your bottles on your bike. How many miles? I see that one came up. How many miles between checkpoints? There's roughly, what is it? It's from the start to the finish, it's about 50 miles, right? And then roughly 50, and then 100 miles is the middle checkpoint, and then roughly another 50 miles or more. It's broken up somewhat like that. It's pretty even, but time wise, it's not so even. So you really have to consider going from checkpoint two to checkpoint three at Big M is the slowest section of the course um, by a long shot. I wish I had like a stat for you on how much slower it is, but just be prepared for it to be a slower section. The miles don't, the first 50 miles are super fast, where 100 to the third checkpoint is very slow and scenic. Is there anywhere to get water? I think the only place to get water between checkpoints is the church. That you can't get aid from your support system. So if there's trail angels out there or people out there in their driveway at the side of the road providing aid for everybody in the race, then that's fair game. But you can't have your stores. Mark, is there any stores at this point? Oh yeah, wait. Stores along the course towards the end. There aren't any after 3. Oh, here we go. Somebody's got it super planned out. Oh, there you go. Mark put it in. Yep. And probably, I would imagine, Mark, most of this is on the website. That's probably where you're pulling it from. Yeah. Yeah, so dig if you're new to the event. I definitely recommend digging through the website. There's a ton of useful information there. It'll make you feel more comfortable. Everything's super well organized. And if you read through that and kind of have it all mapped out, and one thing I do with my support crew is I kind of estimate my times. I kind of give them a range so they know when I'll be coming into checkpoints and whatnot. So there's a lot of planning that goes involved in it with it being a point to point course, but it's well worth it. And from what I've heard, people love being support out there too. It's a fun day for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. No, another 50. So that puts you about halfway. Yeah. And it's not exactly 50 for each, but it's pretty close ballpark. It's pretty split up. But again, the time from checkpoint 2 to checkpoint 3 is the longest of the 3, just because of the seasonal roads, the sand, the hills. You're getting tired. It all adds up. Yep. Any other general questions about training plan? Hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you can, I would, yes, definitely train for the elevation. But it's not necessarily a hilly course. But that second, yep, absolutely. Yeah, make those longer rides in the month or so out from the event as specific as possible. So like pre-race breakfast, night before your race day setup, course. I would aim to train for the second half of the course. Again, that first half is kind of a warm up. You're just getting going. You really want to prepare for the second half, which is much hillier to go by. Yep. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. I don't want to say go overboard in terms of like preparation, in terms of um, making those month out longer rides as specific as possible. But and even to the point of like, I'm not a huge, the I've always, when I work with athletes, I try to encourage them to not, camp out at the aid stations, like sit down. Sometimes you're toast, and at the, checkpoint three, you just need a break, and you do need to stop, take off your socks, change your bibs even. Some people do that. So be prepared for the worst, but at the same time, like, get in and out of the checkpoints, get moving. It's hard to get going again once you stop. So even all that in your training, if you're going out for a century ride, in my opinion, don't be going and stopping at a coffee shop for an hour or something halfway through, because you're not going to do that in the race. Hmm. Hmm. I mean, if you have the opportunity to do a point to point, it would be halfway to the finish. But if you need to do a loop course, I would say the 100 mile, the race course that they use for the 100 mile is a good option. But somewhere on that west side of the state, kind of exploring that side, um, is the best, definitely for sure. Getting to see some of that, and it's awesome scenery and it's awesome riding. So you, you'll enjoy it too, for the views. Mm. Yeah, I mean the kind of what a lot of people are doing these days. I mean, I think they're aiming for 100 grams of carbs per hour. That's on the high end. Some people it might be 60 grams. Some people it might be over 100. Um, And so that's something I would even start now working on. Even every ride you get on, every quality ride for the most part, you're getting in calories. You're training your gut to get used to that, and then throughout the day on the race, at your checkpoints, I'd say have a variety to pick from, because you get to that second and third checkpoint, you kind of don't know what you're gonna like. I think, what did my wife one year had? I think she picked up like donuts and chips or something, and that was perfect. And then there's one race I did where they had cheesy bread and Mountain Dew, and that was just amazing. So you never know. And so if you have some options at your checkpoints, that's good. And then you have your liquid calories, gels, things on the bike. But have a variety, because you can't drink. I'll use just Gatorade. You can't drink Gatorade all day. You just you'll get sick to your stomach too much. Does that help at all? Will you be having support out there? Are you going to use the drop bag system where they drop and have stuff at each checkpoint? Okay. Yep. Yeah. So you'll have your bags, and obviously you're gonna have to, probably in that situation, you're gonna have to carry a little more than you would, if you had support out there, which isn't a problem. A lot of people do that, and so just have a hydration pack that maybe has some pockets, and if you have bags on your bike, that can also work to help get you through things. And then at your checkpoints, just have a variety of options, maybe a couple random things. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich has always been a favorite of mine. Adjust the plan for the 100 miler? Great question. Quality during the week, I would say, stays the same. It's just not having to get in all those, big, massive rides. So, you know, if you're some of your longer rides are up to 100, I would say that's plenty. Depending on who you are. I'll say if you're like super competitive towards the front, you're going to be going over 100. If you're like more just aiming to finish and enjoy your day, you're trying to get close to 100 on a couple rides. Some of those weekends where they're like back to back longer rides, you can cut those down a little bit. So they definitely don't have to be that big. But during the week, kind of stays primarily the same because you can only do so much. You know, riding, if you have time to ride 20 hours a week, that might not be better than 10 hours a week for most of us that are working, families, doing all that jazz. Uh, Great question. Yep. Yeah, I would consider that. I don't have an equation or whatnot, but I would definitely keep that in mind. I would definitely, again, being as specific as possible, because a gravel century, yes, is different than a road century, and it definitely beats you up a little more. But your body. I've always felt, and people I've worked with, they adapt to it. We're human. We adapt to kind of the stresses we're put through. And so if you're riding gravel, you get stronger and ride gravel, and you're better at that and less fatigue. So that's definitely something to consider, your environment. But again, sometimes you live in a place and you don't have the option to ride gravel, so you just have to do the best you can. Do the best you can in your situations. Right, but that's we're here to clear everything up. Yeah, yeah. If it's yeah, great question. It's only an issue if it's the monsoon year. So one year you're probably reading about the monsoon year, um, and I think by I never changed my brake pads that year in the monsoon, but I had no brake pads towards the end. It was just metal on metal, and then I was down to one gear by like checkpoint three. I wasn't able to shift anymore, so I just like single speeded it the rest of the way. So yeah, I mean those years where it is wet. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, and even I don't know I'm not a mechanic by any means, but I've always had the ones that can withstand those kind of conditions, but they still wear out. I don't think if you get the best ones for an event like Coast to Coast, if it rains a ton, there's nothing that can survive it, you know. And that's but a lot of people make it through the race and they're fine, and you use your brakes less and a little more strategically. But that's the amazing thing about this event. It's just like, yeah, you do the best you can to prepare, and you show up, and you don't know what is gonna really happen in an awesome way. Yeah, right. Yep. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yep. Yeah, and Right. And the checkpoints are, I've always heard and found them to be super supportive. And so, you might need some help in some way or something, and everybody's there to support everybody. And it's just a very good environment. And yeah, I've had one athlete, I think, changed out of the chain one year that I worked with, that monsoon year. Um, but again, yeah, you just, you can only do what you can do, and it is, yeah. Oh, somebody asked about drive chain. I've always used just standard lube. I know a lot of people are waxing their chains these days. I've heard pros and cons. I don't think there's a true winner in that regard. But if you have the option to bring some extra, and have it at the checkpoints, it can't hurt, to have that kind of stuff. If you have any, yeah, go for it. Very few ride a mountain bike. It's just there's too much, in my opinion, there's too much fast pavement and sections that it would be it doesn't outweigh um, right. Yep. And that brings another good point. If I've struggled with it. Coming from, I was a triathlete at one point, a very short period of my life, and so I felt like as a gravel cyclist, throwing on aero bars made me like a triathlete. But I'll use them now. I think moving forward, the last couple of years I have, it's just such a huge advantage. So if you can put aero bars on your bike, I highly recommend it. One for the speed gains, and two for the comfort. As you're fatiguing and having another position to get into, it's game changing. I really think it is. So I would, if there's something high on your list and you walk away from this little meeting, and you put on aero bars because of this meeting, then it was worth it, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah. I've I've done it both with and without, and two, I swear I recover so much faster the years I use aero bars, just from having another position and being able to just sit in and relax. And yeah, I'm not as beat up for sure. And especially too, if you're going to be out there longer in the day, that's more time on your bike. And you know um, yeah, again, can't recommend it enough. Um, Again, I just going back on the training plan, use it as a guide. Nothing's set in stone. Every athlete's a little different, but I think it's a good kind of, we'll say, North Star or something to kind of point you in the right direction as you kind of go on this venture. Some you might not, yeah, you might do 75% of it, what is there, and I think you'd still come close to being well prepared for the event. So be flexible, and yeah, use it as a guide. Mm. Yeah. I can still remember the nerves of preparing for it and just being so uncertain, and getting in the longer rides, and just questioning, is it enough, and yeah, just because you've never been on I've never been on my bike that long. And it's amazing how we're human, and we preserve, and we can keep going. And I've had some rough years out there, and bonking pretty hard, but yeah, it's pretty good, in my opinion. And I think having a plan like this in the community now, like the Facebook page and the information out there, I think really helps people kind of wrap their head around things. But again, you know, the best years I've had out there is where I've held back that first 100. You know, it's beneficial to, ride with people, but not at the expense of, being on the edge that first half. So if you're lucky and you can find a group to work with, definitely try to stick together and help each other get through that first 100. But again, not at the expense of being on the edge by any means. Um, if you had to look at, oh, go ahead. Somebody had a question. Yeah, it seems to be a great place, and yeah, like in terms of equipment and stuff, I've done it on as low as 35s up to 50s. You can do it. You can do it on a lot of different things. You can do it on a mountain bike. I had one of my best friends did it on a mountain bike for the first time last year, and he was fine. He did though have a mountain bike with aero bars. So there's I guess one way you could get around that, doing that. Oh, Mark put the Facebook in the group there. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, I wish I knew how many first timers were on here and stuff, but it's it it's definitely a cool event. First time, it's just I don't know. I can't remember how many days we're out from the event right now, but it starts now. It really does, and it's just being consistent. It's doing nothing crazy. You don't have to train crazy for this event. Yeah, there are some bigger weeks. Yeah, there are some bigger rides, but you're only able to do those rides because you stacked all those just basic weeks up. Most weeks you should be feeling good and not drained and not killing yourself. Very few workouts you should end like gassed. Always be saving a little something that's going to allow yourself to bounce back. Always be feeling well on the bike when you're, doing your quality stuff. That'll help you bounce back. A big part of this is, that stress and rest balance. The cross training days, find stuff you enjoy doing. If it's going for a walk, I have one athlete that walks his dog 4 miles a day on his cross training days. And it's a great activity. He loves doing it. He's active. It helps with his recovery, keeps you moving. So be creative. Did I get any other last minute questions? Oh, there you go. Mark said it. 157 days to go. I don't know. Does it sound like a while? Does it sound like nah? I don't. To me, I don't know. That's yeah. I don't know. It can be either or. It depends how you look at it, right? Is the glass half full or half empty? I don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. um, I base it off of my training. Like I've previously based it off of my training, so you have a good estimate there. What do you think you can ride comfortably? And something I lost track at one point. Power numbers have always come in for me at least in like that zone two range. Some years have been like super low zone two. Some years have been um, a little more than that, but it's nothing crazy in terms of it's really just keeping things steady. So yeah, I think that training, being as specific as possible in your training, so you can get some good kind of data points in terms of like, okay, this is what I think I can do, um, and then going from there. But again, that second to third leg, um, is a lot slower. I wish I had my numbers. Maybe I'll post it in the Facebook group or something in terms of like average, and maybe it's been posted before, but average speed over each section to see the difference. And I'm gonna make a note right now because I think that would be good. Keith, are you on the Facebook group? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I can do that. And maybe for those of that aren't on Facebook, maybe Mark can even like include it in an email or something at some point. I think that'd be a good stat for people just to see, how that all works out. Um, yeah. Yep. Yeah, great. Yeah, that first 100, it's pretty like tame. Nothing ever gets away in the first 100. And then right after that second checkpoint coming out of the high school and you get back into the gravel and it gets hilly. And some years it's a little soft on the roads. So that even starts zapping some people's legs a little bit. And then people usually start making their moves kind of once they get out of the high school there, and then it's kind of death by attrition to some degree, and people just hanging on and trying to work through it and see who can last the longest. Some years groups form and kind of work together to keep things going. Um, Most years it's kind of almost blown up after that high school, and everybody's been on their own to the finish. So you just, again, you never know what's going to happen. Hmm. Or the very last section, or this like the middle, like yeah, but there, and that's where the hills. It might be downhill like net, but that's where the hills start, and then um, until you get to that third checkpoint, Big M is where a lot of the seasonal roads are and sand. So it's just like you don't need a mountain bike for any of this stuff. Like you can be, in my opinion, an average bike handler and you're 100% fine. Now, the ORV, like off road vehicles, have started to, they've had access to these roads over the years recently, and things have started to get chewed up a little bit. So it has changed them somewhat, um, but it's nothing crazy. But then after you get out of the last checkpoint, Big M to the finish, you can feel kind of the downhill at that point. You definitely can't feel the up or the downhill from 100 to what is it, 160 or whatever. Yeah. Okay. I think we do have like 10 minutes left on the call that for Google is sending me warnings right now. Um, it didn't feel very downhill to me. Yes, question. Mm. I've never heard of dead spots. There very well could be, and maybe it depends on your cell phone carrier too. Like Verizon versus AT&T versus T-Mobile, that might be a factor. Um, Mark, do you know of any issues or whatnot? Yes. Okay. Mm, Yep. Yeah, that is lumberjack. Yep. So that's the parking lot they use for the start and finish of lumberjack. When you're going through Big M, kind of. Yeah, you're just, I mean, you are on some single track through there, but it's nothing, not for long. I think too the main section when you are single track, if it's the same this coming year, you're going uphill, so you're just, you know, you're crawling up this hill. And then once you get out of that, I think it opens up as you come down out of Big M. I'm a horrible person with that question. I don't pay a ton of attention to my gearing. Um, but from what I know, it's pretty average. I use one buy, so just something up front and just one option up front. And I would say normal gearing in the back, nothing crazy. Correct. Yes, yeah, it's very typical gravel, and it's gonna be hard towards the end, but it's nothing insane by any means. Any other? Oh, gears last year. Oh, here's a good. I was worried about gears last year. Had a low 42, and it was fine. So that helps a little bit. And another might be another great question for the Facebook group. I'm sure you ask a million people and you're gonna get 2 million answers. I don't. That's a great question. Maybe third. I don't. I don't. I've never second or third. I think it was third. Maybe. It was last year was my fastest, and I was like 10 something. I think, and that was a fast year, and that was I think the sec out of 7 times, it was only the second time where I had people to work with um after Big M. So yeah, yeah, just the power to being having people around you and working together. It's a big factor too. Hmm. Mhm. Yeah. I don't have a good answer off the top of my head. I and Barry's interesting because it's early season, and so you don't if you're in the Midwest here and in Michigan, it's you don't have the same fitness and a specific fitness. You might be coming fit off the trainer, but in my opinion, that's not the same fitness that you have leading into coast to coast, being able to be outside for 2 to 3 months and getting in some specific work. Um, but Barry's if you can do Barry, if you can get a mug at Barry, I don't want to say what you can do, but you'll be fine at coast to coast. You know, um, yeah, that's a good benchmark. If early season Barry 100 is definitely a hard event, and if that's kind of on your list, it'll prepare you well for coast to coast if you keep up the good training until June. Support group. Yep. Yeah. You got some good training, and so I think that'll help. I'm happy to hear some people now are considering aero bars because of our conversation. That's a good thing, I think. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Depending on where you are on the course, as it gets dark, Um, for the most part, you need it to see just because it's so remote and up north, and you're not getting much ambient light from anywhere. If you make it out of checkpoint three, Big M, and it starts to get dark, you could probably be totally fine with just a small light. Um, but Yeah, I would say prepare to have something um, to see if you think you're in that range kind of, and if you have, I don't know, support or a drop bag or whatever, definitely throw a good light in there. Um, yeah, yep, yeah, and we've never had an incident, I don't think, so I think we're good. There you go, 9:33 p.m. beats the sunset. So that's a big goal for a lot of people. So, um, and it's definitely doable. Um, Okay, we got 3 minutes left, so I guess I'll try to start wrapping this up. Yeah. So again, thanks a lot for, coming to this meeting. I hope it answers some questions. I can still remember, 7 years ago, my first time doing it, having a ton of doubt. But get in, some basic training, just be consistent, get in a few big rides to kind of test things out. A lot of it too is like, you have the fitness, but it's just being on your bike for a long time. Your hands get tired, your neck gets tired, your shoulders get tired. A lot of weird things get tired that you never thought would get tired, and so you gotta put yourself in that position. Not a ton, um, but at least you got one big ride kind of before the main event, and you don't have to go hog crazy with the training. Be conservative that first 100, um, as you get out there. You'll have a lot of energy and be ready to go, but definitely be prepared for after checkpoint two in a good way, though. It's very, very well worth it. Mark, anything else? Are we good? Okay. Probably directly, just because I probably couldn't keep track of the Facebook group enough. It seems to move pretty fast. So either way is fine, but okay, cool. Okay, Google is ready to kick me out. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night and good luck with your training. Thanks for attending. Bye bye.